Welcome back to an all-new episode of the BWI Daily Recruiting Show. I'm Greg Pickel, and today we have a new recruiting prediction machine pick from Ryan Snyder. We'll get into who the BWI recruiting expert thinks will end up with the Nittany Lions. Next, we're going to talk about the TNT duo that committed to Penn State last week, and we'll get into the last quiet week before a little bit of a storm comes for Penn State and colleges across the country as visits are coming back next week to campuses all across the Big Ten and the nation. So that's what we're getting into on the BWI Daily Recruiting Show, and it starts right now. He's Ryan Snyder. I'm Greg Pickel. It's Tuesday, July 19, and Ryan, Penn State ended last week with a very good Thursday and Friday. The Nittany Lions pick up a pair of linebacker commitments, both four-star players. Tony Rojas out of Virginia, Tamir Robinson, of course, from Pittsburgh. They're going by the moniker TNT, which, of course, is T for Tony and T for Tamir. And Ryan, obviously, Penn State fans have been looking forward to these announcements for quite some time. Rojas was expected to decide a little bit earlier in the month, but they decided to go back-to-back for whatever reason they ended up doing so, and it goes in Penn State's favor. Two recruitments that maybe at some points throughout this process looked like they could be getting away from the Nittany Lions, but ultimately they secure both of these guys, and it's a big first win for Manny Diaz as the defensive coordinator and linebackers coach here at Penn State.
Now they have one of the best linebacker duos in the country, and if they can add Kaveion Keys down the road, I have to see all the other schools out there. I mean, I know Georgia's putting together a hell of a linebacker class, but it certainly would stack up there with the very best. I'll get right to the point. I mean, Tony Rojas and Tamir basically committed during their official visits. That's why we were all pretty confident that this was going to happen. I remember right after that visit, everybody was telling me Tony wasn't going to visit Georgia. And then, he tells Brian Doan, of course, that he is. And I remember with all that going down, and it felt at the time that brought some excitement or whatever you want to call it, something to watch for, I guess, with Rojas. But really, this was done the day they left campus back on whatever that was, June 19th, I want to say it was. So Penn State's felt good about these guys, knowing that they were basically what you would consider silent commits. And now that they are public and firmly recruiting for Penn State, it should only help them down the road. I know Tamir Robinson's already working on guys. I had a good little talk with him the other night about some of the players he's recruiting, and Tamir's personality wise is perfect for it. Tamir, I've thought for the longest time that if Tamir were committed earlier, if Tamir would have committed back in April, for example, I think there's a good chance that. We just been hearing more about his efforts on the recruiting trail because his personality is absolutely perfect for it. But Tony Rojas is technically a little bit of the higher ranked one. It's at number 101 in the consensus, number 120 and for on 3. And then, of course, Tamir is number 121 in the consensus, number 172 by on 3. But we're talking about two of the best linebackers in the country here, both in the top 15. And Penn State had to get these guys. They were musts from the very beginning, and they were able to get the job done. So big credit to Manny Diaz. Big credit to Kaveion Snyder here. Kaveion had a big hand in the Tony Rojas recruitment. We talked about Manny and some others a lot more with Rojas, but I want to make sure Snyder gets his due on that one because that's his area. And I think Snyder was the one that was consistently through it. And of course, once Manny joined, Manny had a massive, massive hand in that one as well. But Kaveion and Terry Smith, of course, with Tamir Robinson, that those guys deserve a lot of credit.
No doubt about it, Ryan. Penn State and Georgia, the only two teams in the country that currently have on 3 consensus. Let me start that over. It's easy for me to say today. 2 commitments from on 3 consensus top 10 linebackers. Georgia building a very good linebacker class. Penn State is as well. They will be considered the 2 programs with the most elite linebacker class in the class of 2022, assuming that everyone gets to signing day and puts pen to paper for their respective commitments as they currently stand. But Ryan, I guess let's just touch on Kaveion Keys quick, because again, if Penn State would add him, it would be just another player that they would add to a mix that is already very good. He's not set to decide, I believe, for about a month. He's eyeing up a decision date, but let's just remind everyone where things stand with him at this point.
August 27th, it's his birthday, so we'll see what happens there. This has been a North Carolina Penn State battle for a long time. I've talked about this a couple times. He was considered a North Carolina silent at one point. I had multiple people from North Carolina side kind of saying that, and obviously one or two Penn State people thought that was the case as well. So there's an agreement on both sides that there was something seriously strong with North Carolina. But hey, silent commit doesn't mean a whole lot if you don't announce it. So there's Penn State feels like they're very much in the mix here. So let's see how it plays out. He has this supposedly a Florida unofficial visit set for the end of July. Let's see if he's able to make it down there. Of course, you cannot take official visits at the end of July, only unofficial. So it'll be on Keys and his family to get all the way down there in Gainesville, which is a bit of a trip, but clearly he has a real interest in Florida. So let's see if he makes it there in about a week or so.
Yeah, so Penn State looking to add its third linebacker with him. We'll find out in due time whether or not they can do that. But speaking of numbers, Ryan, on 300 was updated on Monday. The Nittany Lions placing numerous commitments inside of the top 100, 200, and of course the entire on 300. 247 Sports updated its rankings as well. So we saw a shift in the industry on three consensus. And I mean, I think let's just start there very quickly and note that Alex Birchmeier is now a consensus 5-star again. If you go to his On3 profile, you will see that there's been a couple of stories written about him having and then losing that 5th star because he is right on the cusp of being a 5th star kind of all across the board. And I believe ESPN is really the only outlet at this point that has him a little bit further down the board than the other three major recruiting services do. So for the time being, Birchmeier's a 5th star. We will see if he will end up as one when all is said and done in December and then, of course, in February. But, Ryan, as for the On 300, as we said, a lot of Penn State guys, moving up and moving around here. But by far the biggest, most notable eye-popping change is King Mack, the safety out of Florida, 4-star prospect, moving all the way up to number 88. He now joins, of course, Jevin Williams inside of the top 100 and also Alex Birchmeier, who are both top 30 prospects. But King Mack flying up that list, T. Frank, in a way that I think maybe we're not stunned about, but he went from, as you can see, if you're watching this on Blue White Illustrated's YouTube page, youtube.com/Blue White Illustrated, he went from not being ranked to the number 88 player in the country, which is one heck of a jump.
Mm-hmm. He was always going to be a 4-star. I remember when I was talking to Charles at the end of May, early June, Charles made it very clear, like, yeah, he's certainly a guy that we're going to move up. And that really, after his track season, that's when it became a no doubter. I mean, he ran a 10.62, by the way, in the 100 meter, and he was a 400 meter state champ. I don't have it in front of me, but it was a ridiculous time. He did it in Florida's 3A, by the way, which is one of the higher classifications out there. Maybe their highest in track, if not, they either have 3A or 4A, but it's one of their higher ones, I know for sure. The only issue with King Mack has always been that he's 5'9" and like 3/4. He's a little under 5'10". Everything else is excellent. His film is, without a doubt in my mind, the best film in this class. It's like 11 minutes long, and it's just play after play after play, interception, big hits. It's got everything you want, and it's 11 minutes of that. And by the way, he missed a game or two last season too, I believe. I think he only played 13 of their 15 games. So there's never been a doubt of King Mack, the player. It was really just one, let's get verified information on his height and weight. We got that. We know he's right around just a hair under 5'10". So we're calling him 5'10", which, yeah, of course, you'd love to see 6 foot if you can get it, but 5'10" is not the end of the world. And then again, you get those track times. It makes it a lot easier to move up. So that from talking to Charles, he saw a lot of movement in the safety position here in this On 300 ranking. That was one big thing he said. And the more they watched King Mack, and then the more they watched other safeties, and then compared verified times, which is massive in this update. I mean, now verified times from all those camps and stuff. That's why you're seeing a lot of the swings that you are. That's how you get a result like this, where you go from a high 3-star player to a top 100 prospect in the country. I mean, Charles flat out said, in our last update, which was like May, I believe it was like May was the last big update, he probably should have been a 4-star then, towards the bottom of the On 300, maybe, 200 to 300 kind of range. So, and then you wouldn't have seen such a drastic jump, but at the end of the day, you got 6 more months to get this right. So you're going to see more movement, of course, but the fact that you're finding your mistakes, or at least what Charles thinks is a mistake and correcting him is all that really matters. And of course, I think 24/7 bumped him up as well. I think he's like just outside the top 100, just inside the top 100 for 24/7 as well. So there's some agreement, of course, with the two sites, which I think is good to see. Whether you subscribe 24/7, you subscribe to 130, what it doesn't matter. It's good to see when scouts and professionals in this industry are aligning with their thoughts.
So King Mack is one of the four Penn State players in the top 10. Ryan, we mentioned Jevin Williams, at number 10, a 5-star by On3. Alex Birchmeyer is just inside the top 30. King Mack, of course, as we just got done talking about, moved up big time. And then we have Elliot Washington, who just flipped, of course, from Penn State to Florida. From Florida, just flipped from Alabama to Penn State. He was number 66. He drops to number 93, which I think that has more to do with, and you talked to Charles Power, the On3 director of scouting and rankings, but I think there were just a lot of shuffling, a lot of guys moving up. Again, when you have someone like King Mack, who's number 88 in the country, and he was unranked previously, it goes without saying that someone has to move down for that to become a reality. So Elliot Washington was the only Penn State representative, Ryan, at the UA Future 50 event down in Florida last weekend. He seemed to get some strong reviews. He was not among the top 10 performers from Charles Power, but he was the all-lobby team from Sam Spiegelman as a guy who really passed the looks test when he walked into the check-in down there at IMG Academy. So 5'11", 187 is what we have him listed at, a 4-star who is just outside the top 100 in the On3 consensus, just inside of it at 4 On3. But Ryan, 4 top 100 recruits for Penn State at this stage. I think most fans would have taken that if you gave him that kind of a rundown, maybe, let's say, at this time a year ago for this class.
Yeah, and I think there's a real chance they'll get 5 there. Like, Tamarian Parker was the other big movement there. He moved down 58 spots to number 129. He was previously 71. I think there's still a real chance Tamarian Parker is a top 100 prospect when it's all said and done. Charles was just kind of, like I said, so we're going to go into a tangent here for a second, but coming off of all these camps, and Tamarian didn't do as many camps, that's when you kind of see some movement that we're seeing here. And this is when you have verified information for players and you don't have verified information for others, and you're coming off all these camps and you're watching film and both players look excellent on film, you're going to lean towards the verified info. And I think that was a big reason why a couple defensive ends moved up ahead of Tamarian Parker in this last update. But Tamarian plays for one of the top programs in the country. He's going to get a game against IMG Academy here. I think it's like week 3 of the season or so, week 4, somewhere in that ballpark. So he's going to get plenty of opportunities to move back up here in the weeks ahead. And I do think there's a real chance Tamarian moves back up into the top 100 when it's all said and done. Just 2 other guys I want to note quick. Conrad Hussey moved up into the On 300, and Joey Schlaffer, moved back up into the On 300. Well, moved into the On 300. Neither were there originally. Joey was previously a 4-star, while Hussey was previously a 3-star in the class. But getting those guys in, only London Montgomery was the only one to drop out. London was number 273 previously. 31 guys moved into the ranking this week, so you're going to naturally have a good chunk of guys move out. Charles flat out said in the story we did yesterday, he thinks there's a good chance that London could get back in there as well. I mean, he's literally probably like 310 right now in Charles right. and our staff's mind. So he's right there on the border, and remains a 4-star player. I mean, our staff was higher on London than anybody to start it out, and that still remains the case. He's just literally just sitting outside the top 300 now. But Penn State has 11 players inside the On 300. They had 9 previously before this last shuffle. So overall, I don't see how you can be upset about anything here. Penn State's their class continues to grow from a ranking perspective, from those kind of strengths, and I think Penn State fans should be happy about that.
Yeah, we saw Jameel Lyons make a jump too. He moved up from number 243 up to number 195, so inside of the top 200 now. The defensive lineman out of Philadelphia. So all in all, good rankings update for Penn State prospects. Now, of course, we'll wait and see, Ryan, how they perform during their senior season. That's right around the corner, of course. We'll have that covered for you on the BWI Daily Recruiting Show as we move along here to your new On3 recruiting prediction machine pick. I know that somebody on our board, and hopefully you're listening out there, was found this pick before you were even able to post it on the Lions Den message board. But of course, you can join for $1 for 1 year of access. That's going to be going on for a limited time. So please be sure to go check it out and subscribe. Ryan, new On3 prediction machine pick in. Why'd you make it? Who is it? And tell us what you think the chances are Penn State lands this prospect.
Yeah, Jalen Thompson out of Cass Tech, 4-star prospect in the consensus and by On3. I wouldn't say that this one is, something happening behind the scenes. There's kind of two predictions in my mind, right? There's like that gut feeling, you're seeing something coming, that kind of pick where things still have to play out, but you feel good about Penn State's chances. And then there's the one where it's done. You're putting in the pick a week or two for some, but it's done. Okay. This one isn't one of those. This is kind of just my gut, my thoughts when I look at the board, when I look at who he's serious about and the other schools in the mix. Jalen's planning to visit Penn State for the Lash Bash. And we know, and he told me last week that he's looking in to visit Ohio State as well. When I look at Ohio State's board, of course, they have Jason Moore committed. They have one other committed. I forget who off the top of my head. But when I look at, they're going for Mateo Ugalele, I believe. He's another top defensive line prospect for them. Desmond Umazulu is another one for them. And then John Walker, too, who, of course, is teammates with Derek LeBlanc. I mean, I see at least 3 or 4 guys on Ohio State's board that are just right now seem to be a bigger priority than where Thompson is. Then when I look at Penn State's side, Jalen Thompson is their number one priority to finish out this defensive end class. So I just think from that perspective, it bodes well. Yes, Michigan State's technically in the mix, I guess. I mean, it feels like Michigan State's dropped off a bit there, but I don't want to overthink that to some degree. But even if Michigan State did start making for a push, like they definitely felt like they cooled on him for a little bit. So how would that impact his recruitment? And I think Cincinnati and Pitt were also in the mix, but just my point here is all signs really point to Penn State and Ohio State at the moment as being his top 2 schools. And when I look at where he ranks for Penn State and where I think he ranks for Ohio State, it makes a lot of sense that he's going to end up here. I know the committed players are working on him hard. He's been chatting with those guys really for weeks now. So I think this Lash Bash is setting up well for potential Penn State. Maybe not a commitment right away from Jalen. I could see him going a few more weeks. He told me probably by mid-August would make the most sense for him, but Just I think all signs are pointing to the Nittany Lions at the moment.
Penn State obviously looking to add another defender here. They've been good at that lately, and Thompson could be another one. We'll see. We're still waiting to see what his decision timeline is going to look like. But obviously, to your point, Ryan, things starting to come into focus there, and maybe something happens sooner rather than later. We'll have to wait and see. But all told, Penn State, is at an interesting point right now in this recruiting cycle, Ryan, because we know that there are a handful of top targets still out there, but we're sitting here on July 19, and space is getting pretty darn full at the end for Penn State in this cycle. I mean, we all have talked about the fact that, yes, oversigning is now possible, and yes, Penn State maybe can get to 25 and still be under the 85 total limit you have to be under and blah, 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 wherever you want to go with that. But I mean, we're getting close to the end here, which is an interesting thing to say in July, but that's just the way the recruiting cycle works now. We know that this is always going to be a busy month for commitments, as is June, and it hasn't disappointed. I don't think Penn State fans are disappointed with how this stretch has played out, and certainly at this point in the cycle, you're sitting with a top 8 or a top 10 number 8 class of 2023, and we know that there'll be some movement as top players come off the board later in the cycle, but all told, Penn State should, I think, really like where it sits at this sort of midway mark of the cycle before you get back into one quick quiet period prior to the dead period that leads into the fall.
Yeah, it's wide receiver, defensive end. I mean, there's a lot of options of where they can go with those final. We'll see. I mean, maybe they have 6 scholarships. I think 23 is the number. The 23 is the number I'm going to push publicly. And if they get into a situation where there's a guy they have to have, yeah, they'll find room for 24 and 25. But right now, I see 4 guys or 4 more scholarships as the most realistic in this class. I think a wide receiver makes the most sense, probably a defensive lineman, whether it's a defensive tackle or defensive end. Then you have those wild cards out there and Kaveion Keys. And of course, what happens with the offensive line. I mean, those feel like the most absolute situations. And then quarterback too. I don't want to obviously overlook that.
Right.
I think Penn State's going to be Penn State's going to try and take a quarterback this year, but I do think that there is possibly a chance now where they wouldn't. It's not ideal. They certainly want one, but the fact that they're looking as hard as they have been over the last couple of weeks, I just starting to wonder if they're liking what they're seeing maybe. But I'm getting ahead of myself there if I'm being honest a little bit. Let's see how it plays out. But there's a lot of ways this can go. I mean, Penn State would even be interested in taking another running back if they could, because I think they maybe expect some movement here after the season. But like I said, a lot of different positions here. I think four more additions is realistic. Like, that's going to happen. They could potentially go to 24 and 25 if they really like what they find. But yeah, this class is 80% finished, and I think you're going to see that here as we move into this final week of July with the visitors who do show up. It's going to be very heavy with 2024.
Yeah, I mean, the Lash Bash, and we'll just move right into that now, obviously. For those who aren't aware, Penn State's big summer visitor barbecue extravaganza that always happens this time of year. It used to be all seniors, not all seniors, but a lot of seniors and current cycle kids, and then a few underclassmen and things like that. And to your point, and we'll have the names over at the Lions Den message board at Blue White Illustrated, where, again, if you're not a subscriber, it's just $1 for 1 year of access. You get us here for free over there. You can get that kind of premium info. But ultimately, Ryan, I mean, you're right. It's going to be a underclassmen heavy list when all is said and done. And that is certainly a change that has happened, over the last 3 or 4 years. And I think that clearly it's become a chance to really lay the groundwork with the underclassmen and continue building that group. Whereas at one point it was about really selling to the class of whatever you're recruiting at that current point in time. And it's no longer that way.
Yeah, the Lash Bash continues to grow, I guess you'd say, as far as the total amount of guys. It used to be this is about commits and just a handful of the very top guys in that class. And you got a few underclassmen who are very important as well. But this year, man, I think we're going to see the biggest Lash Bash we've seen so far. Just the amount of feedback I'm getting from kids. There seems to be a good handful of prospects throughout the region who are planning to attend that event. I will get a list up here in the coming days. One thing to note is this is going to be my last podcast for the next probably week or two. I'm about to move. So I'll get into a little bit of Lash Bash now because I don't know how much we're going to get into it over the next week. I think we're going to see about 50 plus players at this event, which is by far the biggest we've ever seen. We will see the handful or a good chunk of the committed guys in attendance there. I would expect probably about 80% of the committed guys to be there. And then it's going to be very heavy with 2024 and even some 2025s as well. So I'll have stories on those individual guys throughout the week. Fans can keep an eye on the site and see who all is confirmed. Yeah, as I mentioned already, Jalen Thompson, 2023 prospect, is expected to be there. One other guy we're keeping an eye on is running back Sam Singleton out of Florida. I'll be curious to see if he's able to actually make it up to Penn State. But those are two guys they're absolutely expecting. And then I would keep an eye on a few wide receivers as well for 2023. We'll keep those names behind the paywall for the time being. But Penn State definitely wants to get a few guys, 2023 guys on campus. One other thing to note, too, for that weekend is that they're going to have two camps. There's an open camp both are open technically, but on Friday there will be a massive camp. I expect a handful of maybe the guys who are attending the Lash Bash the next day to participate in that camp. But there's also going to be a mini camp that same day as the Lash Bash. And by Penn State hosting a mini camp that day, that'll allow them to work out some of the younger guys coming in and plan to attend the Lash Bash. So smart move by the staff there. Obviously, they're professionals. They've been doing this a long time. They know the right way to schedule some things. But a lot of these top players who are coming on the campus Friday and Saturday are going to get the opportunity to work out for the staff. And I think that'll bode well for them down the road. So one other thing I will note, too, is Penn State's coaching staff will go on their retreat next week. So Monday, Tuesday, and of course, Wednesday is Big Ten Media Day. So I don't expect a lot of visitors early in the week. Like I said, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, there's not going to be a whole lot of people here up in Lash. They'll be on their retreat. Once you get to Thursday, I've already talked about this. Anthony Specca, top 2024 prospect out of Pittsburgh, who I think is probably their number one linebacker target, if not maybe Aaron Childs, but this is like a 1 and 1A, kind of like Tony and Tamir. I mean, they're both incredibly important. But Specca will be coming up there on that Thursday. So I think it's like the 28th, I believe. So that will be a massive visit as well. So Thursday through Sunday, basically, we should see a ton of players on campus. And we'll see if any cards fall. Maybe a 2024 commitment. There's been chatter. There's a lot of top 2024 guys coming. I don't know if anyone's going to pop or not, but Penn State would love to get some more momentum there. Of course, they already have Cooper Cousins, but we'll keep an eye on Jalen Thompson, maybe some 2024 guys, and see how the cards fall.
Well, Penn State will keep busy on the recruiting trail again. Obviously, it's been a dead period that was not very dead in terms of commitments and individual announcements and updates and things like that. So we'll have you covered the rest of the week at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com and, of course, next week as well. Ryan, any final thoughts as we come down the home stretch of another BWI Daily Recruiting Show edition?
No, just like I said, I got some family things coming up, so this might be my last. We won't have a recruiting pod next week. Of course, you're going to be at Big Ten Media Days, going Tuesday and Wednesday. So no recruiting pod next week, guys. I will try and squeeze in a podcast with T. Frank maybe that following Friday, so the day before the Lash Bash, if I can make it work. But I'll be kind of checking out here for a little bit for the next week or so as my family makes a move. So appreciate you guys subscribing, and we'll catch up next time I get a chance. It's going to look different next time.
Yeah,
next time
it's going to look very different. Yes.
Yeah. This is all, I got to figure out where my room's going to even be in the house. So I got a lot of setting up to do, but next time we record one of these, it's going to look a lot different.
Ryan, the first answer to that question is that wherever your wife tells you to go and or whatever room she doesn't want will be where your office is. So
there's this room in the basement of my house, but it's like green. It looks a little funky, So I'm like, this room's perfect for it, but the background is, you guys are gonna be like, yeah, it just doesn't look good. So maybe I'll paint it and it'll look good. Probably not though, the first time we record. But anyway, we'll figure that out when the time comes.
All right. Well, good luck with the move. For Ryan Snyder and Thomas Frank Carr, I'm Greg Pickel. It's been another edition of the BWI Daily Recruiting Show. T. Frank's back with the BWI Daily tomorrow, and we will catch you next time. Have a good week.